The year is 1996. The internet is rapidly shedding its origins as a quiet academic network and exploding into a mainstream global phenomenon. For the political leaders of the physical world, people the early internet pioneers called weary giants of flesh and steel, this borderless expansion provoked immediate panic. In the United States, that panic crystallized into the Telecommunications Reform Act. Lawmakers wrote strict new rules, attempting to impose physical world decency standards and censorship onto the digital frontier. This push for control spanned the globe. Governments in China, France, Germany, and Russia simultaneously scrambled to erect guard posts around their respective edges of the web. These coordinated legislative efforts revealed a deep disconnect. The politicians treating cyberspace like a public construction project that could be easily fenced in and regulated did not realize the nature of the network they were trying to control. In February of that year, the elite of the physical world gathered at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Attending that exact summit was Perry Barlow, an essayist and internet pioneer. Watching these governments try to claim sovereignty over the web, he drafted a fiery rebuttal, a declaration of the independence of cyberspace. Barlow saw the new telecommunications laws as an insult to historical American ideals. He pointed out that these regulations directly contradicted the principles of free expression championed by early thinkers like John Stuart Mill. The legislation openly repudiated the concepts of liberty mapped out by legal giants like Louis Brandeis. Barlow made a specific claim: regulating the web was morally wrong and, because of the internet's architecture, physically impossible. His manifesto drew a hard line in the sand. He declared cyberspace the new home of mind, demanding that the obsolete physical governments of the past leave this new world entirely alone. The first major conflict Barlow identified was a problem of geography. Physical borders are rigid and defined, while the digital space exists everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Traditional governments operate on the consent of the governed, a concept relying entirely on physical borders. A nation claims legal jurisdiction over the citizens standing within its map. This visualization shows the architectural difference. Cyberspace operates as a standing wave of transactions and thought, a continuous, oscillating pattern staying in one place, like data pulsing through a network entirely outside of physical boundaries. Physical law relies entirely on arresting bodies. Barlow pointed out the obvious flaw. Digital identities do not have physical bodies. You cannot put a line of code or a virtual alias in handcuffs. Because cyberspace entirely lacks matter, the core tool of physical governments, the threat of physical force, is rendered useless online. The second major clash involved the concept of property. Information industries from the physical world attempted to force traditional models of ownership onto digital spaces. This industrial mindset treated human thought and expression as a manufactured product. To them, an idea was an industrial commodity, no different than a block of pig iron. The digital realm operates on a completely different physical reality. Whatever the mind creates here can be reproduced infinitely and distributed globally at exactly zero cost. The global conveyance of thought no longer requires massive printing presses, heavy manufacturing plants, or physical shipping networks to accomplish. Barlow categorized the intellectual property laws attempting to enclose this space as hostile and colonial measures, pushed by distant, uninformed powers trying to tax a world they didn't live in. Applying physical property rights to a space designed for infinite, costless reproduction creates a mechanical contradiction. It is a legal framework completely incompatible with the architecture of the web. If physical governments lack jurisdiction and physical laws cannot be enforced, how does a digital society keep from devolving into chaos? Barlow believed order would emerge naturally through a new social contract. He argued that governance online would arise directly from ethics, enlightened self-interest, and the common well of the users. With digital identities distributed across thousands of physical jurisdictions, he proposed that the only universal law all constituent cultures would recognize was the golden rule: treat others as you wish to be treated. This ethical foundation was meant to support a utopian space, a world that anyone could enter without privilege or prejudice accorded by race, by economic power, by military force, or station of birth. It required a commitment to absolute free expression. Anyone, anywhere could voice their beliefs, no matter how singular, without fear of being coerced into silence or conformity. Barlow wasn't advocating for lawless anarchy. He was outlining a self-governing civilization of the mind, one he hoped would be more humane and fair than the flawed systems built by physical governments. 30 years after Barlow published his declaration, looking at the internet today forces a critical question. Did his vision of absolute digital freedom actually survive? The governments Barlow addressed never stopped trying to contain what he called the virus of liberty. They spent the ensuing decades successfully erecting massive digital guard posts at their borders. While our digital identities remain distributed, they are increasingly tied to our physical bodies and subjected to the exact state surveillance and physical laws Barlow explicitly rejected. The dream of infinite free reproduction of thought now competes with the reality of digital enclosures, rigid paywalls, and consolidated corporate control over the platforms where we speak. Barlow confidently declared cyberspace immune to sovereignty in 1996. The reality is that the ongoing clash between borderless ideas and physical control remains the defining conflict of our digital age.